Okay.
Good enough.
Neat. We're recording?
Yes, we are recording.
Yeah,
Very cool.
we are.
So I've
We're
been saving
live
this
on
one all week.
twitch.tv/the Palladian Papists.
At some point,
Look, Patrick Nevy from The Crunch accidentally went live on Twitch while he was recording The Crunch.
oh really?
And I hopped into his Twitch chat and I'm like, dude, is this The Crunch live on Twitch? Wow, this is so cool. And he was totally oblivious because the button on OBS is right next to the start streaming and start recording buttons are right next to each other. So you might accidentally hit one.
Oh, easily.
Sure.
And
So
I don't think he even knew that he was live because he expected no one to be in his chat.
Is this
But he
basically the
stopped it
same setup
eventually.
as the Crunch? Are we cool like that?
We are more or less doing the same thing that they do. I record on Audacity. They record on OBS apparently. At least Patrick does.
Yeah.
One of my classmates is really good friends with Ethan Stevie.
Oh.
He's just got done with Focus. Shout out Joseph if you're listening.
Thanks for listening. If you are Joseph.
Both of you out there, thank you
both
for
of you.
listening.
Now, sometimes I wonder if our two listeners are spreading the good word about the podcast. Telling their friends to actually listen to it, and if their friends actually listen to it. But you know what? I think we can give them the benefit of the doubt. I have faith in our listeners.
I have
Yes.
faith in our listeners too.
As do I. I recognize that.
I've been saving that all week. I thought of it on Monday. I had to throw that in there. I was going to do a little more organically, but I just couldn't contain myself any longer.
It can be.
You,
can get that.
I think you failed to catch the one where Nathan said, "I recognize that."
You weren't
You-
paying
Oh,
attention.
no. I remember now. I remember now. To whom it may concern, will understand.
To whom
to
may
whom
concern
it
it will
may.
understand.
I haven't really checked how many listeners we got, but I was talking to some friends at a friend's wedding, and one of them mentioned, he started listening to it. So I was like, thank you for listening.
Thank
to
you
the
for
podcast.
adding to our
Thank
two
you,
listeners.
whoever you are.
Well, it was, he said, I was like, oh, how many episodes you listened to? First one. Oh.
Yep.
Well, gotta start somewhere. I was like, don't worry, it gets better. I think.
It gets better, I think.
Oh. I like to think it does. It
Well, there's
has.
been big news in things that Riley cares about this week,
Such as?
such as the purchase of Bethesda by Microsoft.
I had heard about
I heard that
that.
was maybe going to be a thing, yeah.
It is a thing.
It is officially a thing now.
Hmm.
And the ramifications of that purchase are massive. Bethesda, for those who may not know, is a game studio notable for the Elder Scrolls games and the Fallout games.
Go back and listen to our episode on Skyrim, if you so choose.
Yeah, if you so desire.
They also own
And-
id Software, so they have Doom and Wolfenstein.
And they publish quite a few other games like the Dishonored series and things like that. So this is a massive deal because now Microsoft will probably, almost guaranteed, be making all Bethesda games Xbox exclusives.
When
So
Microsoft
you-
says Xbox exclusives, they mean it also comes to Steam and might come to Switch at some point.
Right, they'll probably do the console first thing that PlayStation has been doing,
Mm-hmm.
where they release the game on their console for a year and then ship it to PC.
Is that what happened? Is Spider-Man still just PS4?
Yeah.
They do that with some of their titles, like Horizon Zero Dawn was a PS4 exclusive.
Or
for the
Knack.
First,
For the PlayStation 3.
No Man's Sky was another title that I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think shipped on PC, but that's probably for the fact that they shipped an incomplete game.
I heard eventually they eventually put more work into it and it's better
Oh,
now,
yeah.
but
It's
People
a
have
much
already
better
lost
game now,
interest.
but the hype is gone. Yeah.
Mhm.
And one of the co-founders of Blizzard, Mike Morhaime, who stepped down as president 2 years ago and left the company altogether last year, has just started a new studio called Dreamhaven.
Ooh.
And
Interesting.
they're basically, their goal is to be like a funding studio. So like if you're a small independent studio and you kind of need some funding, you go pitch an idea to them and they bring you like
Indie game Shark Tank, basically,
it's sort of,
but
except
not
it's-
the TV show.
but not the TV show. There's no drama about it, which is
Mhm.
awesome. Like this project is so exciting. I
That is
can't wait to
that
see
is-
what
sounds
comes out of
it
this.
sounds pretty solid. Yeah, I imagine there's probably going to be some projects that would have never maybe seen the light of day necessarily, but like if people have the funding, they can put the time into it.
I don't know exactly how indie they intend to go because they already have 2 studios that they're working with. So I
Mhm.
think their intent is to sort of let those studios like be the things that are making games and sort of
They're
incorporate.
like
people
they're
into those things.
producers.
Yeah, they're essentially holding more of a production role, which is
Neat.
Like-
super neat.
That could theoretically turn out some really good content.
Yeah, for sure. And they've got some of the creative leads for the biggest games Blizzard's ever put out, so it's gonna be a heck of a company.
Nice.
Nice.
And last but certainly not least, SAO Progressive was just announced this last week.
Okay.
Is that another movie or?
No, it's not.
It's the
it
one where they
is.
get insurance.
It's
Mm.
where it's what SAO should have been in the first place.
Oh.
So it's a floor by floor clear of the Aincrad arc. Originally, SAO was sort of like a novel contest submission. So the original writers did it as like a contest entry, and it had to fit certain requirements.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Okay.
so there were some concessions he made in the way he wrote it to make it fit that. But he went back and rewrote SAO Progressive as a separate light novel series that goes through and explores the, all 70 whatever levels.
So
that
is this
were-
a manga then now, or?
It's a light novel series,
Oh,
which
okay.
is basically, it's a novel with some pictures thrown in there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Now
I
what?
believe it's been adapted into a manga, but the anime is coming.
Yeah, I was gonna
next
say
year.
how much do you suppose
Okay.
that'll affect that?
Interesting.
So rather than continue with the story as we have it now after Alicization, they're choosing to go with Progressive, which I'm not entirely opposed to. Because there's probably lots of really good stuff in there that, well, if you've read the light novels, you'd know. But
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
Neat stuff. Did a little hunting today. We're recording on a day that we a little different from what we normally do, but I went out and shot some ducks with my brothers and a couple of their buddies, and it was a good day. Yeah, I haven't gone duck hunting since my freshman year of college, so it was a good time. Got up really early. My brother's dog is a little pampered by my brother's wife, Sammy. So she's kind of lost her hunting dog appetite, I guess. So she had no clue what was going on when we were trying to get her to fetch birds, even though they'd been practicing with like a dummy for months.
Mm-hmm.
My Adam and the dog. So we just had to put her in the truck and keep hunting. But there was one time. So you put out decoys and you lay in blinds that are covered with like wheat chaff and stuff to blend into the field, right? And so when they get close enough, you pop up and shoot them. And so one time I was like kind of dozing off because we got up at like 5 to go set everything up before sunrise. We camped out in the field in some tents. And there's one time I dozed off and I woke up as a pair were coming in, and my other brother Ryan was starting to shoot at him. It's like I might have had a shot on if I was awake.
Mm-hmm.
But I shot 2, which is one more than I shot last time 5 years ago. So the group of us had 9 total. So
Yes.
good stuff.
Sounds successful.
Yeah. Did a little outdoorsy stuff this weekend. Now my allergies hate me because all that wheat dust
Mm-hmm.
and soybean harvest. My sinuses are not happy. But we're doing good.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in James' world.
Nathan's world is a lot more school. Just it's the grind. You know how it is.
I'm calling out for Nathan.
Calling out from
Calling out for
Nathan's world.
world. If you want to break free, you
Gotta listen to me. No,
Study on, Nathan.
Study on. Study. No. We haven't talked since we got back from the bachelor party, though.
Oh, the bachelor
I went
party was
to
fun.
James's fiance or James's sister's fiance's
I
bachelor
have a
party.
fiance? Sweet.
No, your sister has a fiance.
What's her name? I kind of want to know.
No, I misspoke.
I saw some weird Russian address in my parents' mail. This could be interesting.
And by anyway, to clarify, by James's sister's fiance, I mean my brother.
Yes.
So we went to his bachelor party. Both James and I,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of the other
And our brothers.
and a couple of our brothers,
And the best man.
and the best man.
The only
And it
one
was
who
just a
wasn't
solid
related.
weekend. We hung out. We played board games. We did an escape room. We drank
Bob
Bob
Dylan's
Dylan
whiskey. It's kind of spicy.
It was.
It was pretty warm on the tongue,
I mean,
even for whiskey standards.
Even for whiskey standards.
Like I'm drinking Glenfiddich right now, which is a little lighter, crisper taste, and then the Tullamore Dew is smoother, kind of like a richer. I'm not a whiskey.
A
expert.
little
Richer.
And this stuff though was like, it was bordering on. It wasn't quite like spiced rum, but it was like a whiskey with some crackle to it on your tongue.
Yeah. It was good stuff, though.
It was really hearty. Like you'd want to drink this on a cold day, kind
Yeah.
of stuff. We did an escape room.
The escape room was fun. We
And
had
we nailed that sucker in 45 minutes.
no hints.
No
It was
hints.
Super fun.
We were only like what was it? The third group to ever do it without hints.
Yeah.
That particular one. So, good
I
stuff.
mean, there were 6 of us, and we divided and conquered. It was a fun time.
Yeah. It was. I can recommend escape rooms now that I've done one.
Yes.
It's all about the group you're with. I think
Right.
we were pretty. It was a pretty puzzle. The
Puzzle
group of
adept
us-
crew.
Yeah, puzzle adept crew. I might have been a little lost on my own, but then with the group, it was like
With
we
a
were
little
able to.
communication, throwing things back and forth, and keeping
Mhm.
track of different things. It was good.
It had this weird gimmick where like it was
It was
an escape room, but they did like a Quiet Place tie-in for some reason, as a promo for the new movie, Quiet Place 2. And all it did was just basically make it so you couldn't talk for like 40 seconds while red lights flashed with the movie, even though you could walk around and do stuff. Like, it wasn't really like the movie, but it was sort of a cheap tie-in in my opinion. But otherwise, the escape room itself was pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was
Well, and if you talked or made noise while the red lights were on, you lost time. That was the kicker there.
right, but we didn't lose time because
We didn't,
we
'cause we
observed
were on top of that.
the silence.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that was my week, and part of his also.
Yeah. I got to another thing on Monday. There was a golf fundraiser thing for the school I work at, and I was supposed to take pictures of the teams, group pictures by this banner on the 10th hole at Moorhead Country Club, and it was a beautiful day. So I basically just sat on a bench all afternoon for work and took pictures every hour, 45 minutes. But it took way longer than I thought, so I didn't really get much else done for work that day. But it was just a night, how many jobs you just sit on a park bench and enjoy nature, like the nice fall weather and the trees and the breeze and the birds, and it was a good time. It was very peaceful. I liked it. But unfortunately, what's not very peaceful were the events affecting a certain character we're covering today on our podcast. We are the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
And today we are covering Christopher Paolini. I believe that's how you pronounce his name, right?
Yes.
His series, book
The
series
Inheritance Cycle.
of Eragon is the main character. Well, there's Eragon, and then
Yes.
there's...
The 4 books are Eragon, Eldest Brisinger, and Inheritance.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
the series as a whole is referred to as the inheritance cycle.
Yep. Because there are other
It was
books
originally
in this.
just going to be a trilogy, but he couldn't fit everything he wanted into
Right.
3 books.
And it's a good thing he didn't
So
because the finale is pretty good.
there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the
Mhm.
4th book. So, the
Disclaimer.
general
Nothing like the movie. The movie doesn't exist. Don't think about it.
We're going to address it at the end and how much it sucks and how much we hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
But,
the only thing I can put input on because I haven't read the books yet.
Yeah. Can recommend. That was
Even
my
if you
pandemic
haven't read
read.
the books, you still recognize how much the movie sucks if you've
The
seen it.
the movie is ridiculously mediocre.
They made it into a Star Wars ripoff, but we'll get into that once we get there.
Spoilers for later.
Not that Eragon isn't a Star Wars ripoff.
But there's a
Honestly,
little more to it than that.
Star Wars is a ripoff of everything else that came before it anyway.
Yeah.
It just
Precisely. Standing on the shoulders of giants or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Eragon is set in a high fantasy world. Allegacia is the name of the land in which it takes place. Largely medieval fantasy sort of thing with dragons and swords and antiquated armies and stuff. So that's the sort of setting that you've got.
It's got a medieval
It's a
flair
very
to it.
Tolkien-esque world,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got a very Tolkien-esque overarching plot line to it, wherein character takes out from tiny village from which they come and trek across the land and do the magical journey and all that stuff. A
Mhm.
very classic hero's journey story.
Yep.
So, the initial book is called Eragon, and right away at the beginning you have this shade named Durza, who ambushes a few elves and tries to steal this dragon egg that they're carrying. He manages to kill 2 of them. The third manages to teleport the egg away. We don't really know where until a little bit. And Durza is, of course, very mad that he allowed the egg to get away, so he
Bad dude.
knocks out the third elf. And then we cut to Eragon, who's a 15-year-old kid at his uncle's farm. He's an orphan, so he lives with his uncle and his cousin Roran. And all of a sudden, he's just doing his farm chores, and he's out in the woods, and this blue egg, well, it looks like a blue stone, like a giant gemstone, just
but very,
falls
very
out of...
smooth.
Yes, incredibly smooth. Gemstone falls out of the sky, and he's like, ooh, this looks valuable. We could probably get a lot of money in this. So he brings it into town, tries to sell it, and no one wants it. And then...
Because no one knows what it is.
No one has any clue what it is, so they don't know if it's worth anything. And he takes it home, and eventually it hatches, and a dragon comes out.
And it gives him a little mark on his hand.
Yep, it burns this little... He doesn't know what it's called yet, but this little sort of spirally mark on the back of his hand. And he raises this dragon in secret for a long time. And eventually, just out in the woods. And eventually, she gets too big to conceal anymore. And these creatures called the Razak sort of catch wind of the fact that the dragon is alive. So they come looking for it. And if he's out doing something one day, and he comes back, and his farm has been burned down, and his uncle's dead. And the Razak did it. And
His cousin had moved to a different town by this point.
yeah, he went off for an apprenticeship, so
He could earn
didn't
money
die.
to marry his sweetheart, Katrina.
Katrina. So naturally, Eragon is very bummed that this has happened. So he decides that since he's got nothing left, he may as well go after the Razak and try to get his revenge. And his mystical friend, Brahm, helps him. He decides to go with him.
Mm-hmm. He only knows him as a old storyteller who lives in the
Yep.
village.
And Brahm knows what's up. He knows a thing or two about dragons. He knows a thing or two about magic. He knows a thing or two about swordplay. So he's a good teacher for Eragon as they sort of trek across the country. They make an attempt to fight the Razak, but it doesn't go so well, and Brahm gets mortally wounded and dies. Sad.
Along the way, Brahm teaches Eragon about the Dragon Riders.
Yes. Tell us more about the Dragon Riders so I can drink whiskey.
Yes. Okay, so long ago, the Dragon Riders were totally not Jedi. They had special bonds with the dragons they rode, and because of magic, they could communicate to each other telepathically. Dragons can't talk like normal people, but you can communicate with them in your mind. That's kind of the thing in the magic system where you can talk to people with your mind, if you're a magic user. And because like the Dragon Riders bond with the dragon, it gives them access to magic if they're human, because normal humans don't have that.
Most
normal
it's
humans.
possible. It's possible to have magical powers without being tied to a dragon, but dragons are very strong sources of magic,
Mm-hmm.
and so they kind of rub off on you.
Yep. And so they sort of use their powers to be peacekeepers throughout the land until one day, Galbatorix, a powerful dragon rider, lost his dragon. So I believe if a dragon rider dies, then the dragon also dies. But if the dragon dies, the rider lives on in horrible pain and anguish, because there's sort of a very deep intellectual like soul connection basically with your dragon. So it's like kind of like unspeakably heart-wrenching loss if you lose your dragon. So it sort of drove him mad, and he demanded that the heads of the Order of the Dragon Riders give him another dragon. And they're like, dude, you need to chill out. No. And so he organizes this rebellion, and they basically kill nearly all of the remaining Dragon Riders. And then Galbatorix takes over the country and makes it the Empire. And he's the Emperor. And because Dragon Riders have magic, they can live for a very, very long time. So I think it's been a century where he's ruling over this land by the time the events of the book happened.
Yep.
So that's essentially where we
fought the Razak. The Razak are these sort of like crow-looking humanoid things.
Mm-hmm.
They always wear hoods, so it's hard to tell what their faces look like.
Yeah, they are sort of servants of Galbatorix, as is
Yeah,
Durza the Shade.
They're his personal assassins, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So, after Brahm has died, they continue on to go try to find the Varden, who are sort of this group that are resisting.
Eragon and Saphira, which is the dragon's name.
Yes, Saphira is the name of the dragon. I forget when she gets named, but I think Brahm had something to do with it.
I think Eragon was hearing about, or he was reading
something
about
it was
the
one
dragons.
of Brahm's tales, I thought.
Yeah, and so he's like, I'll call you Saphira because that sounds like a cool dragon name. From the old tales that Brahm used to tell.
Yeah, so they learn that the Varden are hiding out at Farthendur.
The rebels,
which is
basically.
The rebels. Yes, Galbatorix is not at all the Emperor. Didn't execute Order 66.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, didn't happen.
And he's totally not looking for the hidden rebel base.
Or a chosen one character figure guy, who's the last dragon rider that we know of.
That we know.
Besides Galbatorix.
And so they go toward Farthendur, and they meet this guy. What the heck is his name?
Well, along the way, they come across what's his face?
Jihad.
No, but like along the way, before they get to Farthendur, they
Murtag.
Murtag, and together they rescue this elf girl that Eragon saw in his magic dream.
Right.
Because he
It
has
was
those.
Arya, who was at the beginning of the book the one who was transporting the dragon egg and stuff. So they rescue her from the Empire. It's kind of risky.
Who's not Padme.
No,
She's actually not Padme. She's
right.
very
They're not.
unlike
They're not
Padme.
brother and sister or anything. But
And Padme was
well,
the mom.
because she's an elf, and Aragon's human. But at any rate,
You made the wrong Star Wars reference. You said Padme when
you were
you meant
talking
Leia.
about Leia.
Oh, I was thinking Leia. Never mind. You're right.
Anyway,
So
She is much
group,
more intelligent than Padme. But
because the Empire really, really, really wants to know where the dragon egg ended up and where Eragon and Saphira are now, because the Emperor caught wind that this is a thing. They had interrogated and tortured Arya, so she's kind of unconscious, and her consciousness is barely holding on to life. So they heal her as they can with Eragon's magic, and then make their way to Farthendur, which is a fortress of the Varden rebels.
it's a dwarven city, more or less, that they're operating this out of.
Mm-hmm.
So many events ensue. Murtagh sort of doesn't want to let them read his mind for reasons that are his own, so they throw him in a jail because they don't know if they can trust him. They have to read your mind before you come in.
It's like a security check.
Yeah, just to make sure you're not having imperial plots.
Mm-hmm.
And Durza comes and assaults the place. They beat people up, and Eragon gets a big ol' scar, and they break this giant.
But he kills
sapphire.
Durza in the process.
But they kill Durza in the end, so hooray!
which is super difficult to do, is to kill a shade.
Yes, you have to stab him directly through the heart, otherwise he won't die.
Mm-hmm.
They fought Murtagh, and they fought him earlier. And I think when they were trying to rescue Arya, they fought him as well.
Yep.
But Murtagh didn't kill him because he didn't pierce him through the heart, so he came back. And that's effectively the end of book 1.
Murtagh
Book
goes missing in the battle,
Yeah.
the big battle at the end.
He sure does. And Eldest pretty much picks up directly where Eragon leaves off. And Eragon realizes that he's really, really bad at magic, and he needs to learn more. So he's in the fight with Durza, he realizes how woefully inadequate his abilities are. And there was this sort of mystical voice in his head that identified itself as the cripple who is whole. So he decides to go
In the
seek
morning,
out
the morning sage, as in morning,
Yes.
as in sorrow.
M-O-U-R.
The morning,
Dagobah.
the morning sage.
So he goes to Dagobah.
Yes,
The
he goes
Elven
to Dagobah.
Forest, yes.
The elfin city of Ellesmere, which is totally not Dagobah.
Mm-hmm.
And
But-
he goes to find the cripple who's whole, who is not Yoda.
The deal with elves is that they're more natural magic users than humans, and they're far more powerful than humans are, even if humans can't use magic.
Totally not Yoda.
There's a whole backstory there. In ancient times, they had a war with the dragons, and then they made peace, and the dragons got them access to the magic.
Yes. And back home, Roran is being promoted to relevant character.
Mm-hmm.
So the Razak are back in town. The boys are back in town.
They want to know where
They're-
that Eragon boy gone.
They're coming after Roran because they know that he's effectively Eragon's last living relative. So they're after Roran, and they can't find him, but they do manage to capture Katrina.
As a hostage.
The hurricane?
Yes, the hurricane,
Oh, that's
Otherwise
Roran's
known as
girlfriend,
his
isn't it?
fiance.
otherwise known as his fiance.
Okay.
And the treacherous butcher Sloane is her father.
Yes, he effectively sold them out. Sold
Yep.
out the whole village
Because he
to
didn't want
Razak.
Roran or whatever. He didn't want him marrying his daughter because he's mean.
Because he's a big old jerk.
Because Roran's pretty cool dude,
Roran is a cool dude.
which we come to
So-
find over the course of this arc.
Yes, and he's like, well, our village is pretty much decimated. There isn't a whole lot left for us here. Let's go join the resistance.
Mm-hmm. It's our best chance of survival.
So he convinces his whole village to start making the trek down to Surda, which is this independent country on the south end of Elgacia,
Which is
It is
supporting the Varden.
secretly, sort of. Because if they were doing it overtly, then the Empire would just swoop in and crush them summarily.
Mm-hmm.
And Eragon,
Eragon.
Eragon goes to Ellesmere with Arya and Auric.
The
Auric
dwarf.
is a dwarf. who he sort of befriended while he was at Farthendur.
He's a good buddy.
He's a good buddy. Oric's a pal. He's not Gimli. Not at all.
No. While
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. While over this time, Eragon gets random seizures from the wound he received on his back from the shade, which is making it really difficult for him to push his abilities and like get stronger in magic because it keeps flaring up and holding him back and gives him a lot of pain because of the dark magic of the shade or whatever the wound it caused him.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of a big problem for him.
Yeah. So he arrives in Ilismira after a long trek, and it turns out that the cripple who is whole, his name is Oramus, and he is a former dragon rider. He survived the great Order 66 of killing all the dragon riders. And his dragon, Glader, is freaking massive. He's a really, really old dragon, and they just keep getting bigger their whole life over, so he's giant. He's gold. He's really cool. But the cripple who is whole, as his name would imply, is quite, he's seen better days physically.
And
He doesn't move around.
And
as well.
Glader is missing a leg.
Yep.
From a past battle.
And Oramus proceeds to be his teacher in magic and teaches him the way that elves do things, and he grows a lot as a magic user.
Mm-hmm.
And while this is all going on, he starts to fall for Arya, because Arya is Elf Lady who he knows, and he is a adolescent. So, like you do.
He's
Except
also still 16, and she's like over 100 because she's an elf.
As elves do.
Yeah.
As elves do. And Arya is smart enough to reject him because of the reasons we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's immortal. He'll die eventually, but
Even though he
just
is a
go on
dragon rider
forever.
with a long life.
She'll still outlast him, for sure. And so he's pretty distraught about all that. Anything else of note before the big battle at the end?
There's this big elven holiday where magic stuff happens, and it's sort of a mystical experience. The spirits of the dragons heal Eragon's back injury and sort of augment his physical abilities, so he's about as strong and as nimble as an elf now, as like sort of a gift to help him overcome Galbatorix. It's kind of this big moment for him. So it changes his physical appearance a little bit as well.
Yeah, he's got pointy ears now, and he's buff and tall and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And then there's a big ol' fight at the end between the forces of Galbatorix and the Varden.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I guess there's a little bit of Roran in there, sort of his...
They're fighting their way
working
down.
with the military.
Mm-hmm.
But so Roran does some heroic stuff in this battle.
He effectively becomes the chief of the village and becomes known as Stronghammer because his main weapon is a hammer.
Is it
And
strong?
manages to lead his village and organize them and to be able to protect themselves and make their way down to the rebels.
And Murtagh shows up again at this battle
On a frickin'
And-
dragon.
on a frickin' dragon, and he reveals that Eragon and Murtagh share a father. They're actually brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Morzan was one of the big bad.
he's one of the Forsworn, which is the 13 dragon
the
riders.
Knights of Ren. I mean the
Yeah.
who was killed by Brahm.
Yes.
Brahm managed to kill him. And let's see. So the deal was there were 3 remaining dragon eggs that hadn't hatched yet that were known. One of them was Saphira. One of them had been captured by Galbatorix already, and he used that. He forced it to hatch for Morzan and bond with him or not for Morzan, for
for Murtag.
Murtag, and bond with him. So now he's a Dragon Rider too. But a little messed up because dark magic stuff is making them mature faster as riders than they should. So it's a little dicey. But yeah. So that's how that
Murtag
happened.
is much, much more powerful than Eragon at this point, just because of this accelerated growth. So Eragon loses pretty hard, but manages to stay alive.
But Murtag
sort of
spares
gives
him.
him, yeah, he totally could have killed him, but he decides.
Well, he was
not
supposed to
kill
bring him back to Galbatorix too.
Yeah. So yeah, that is more or less the end of book 2.
Yep.
They, at the very end, Eragon and Roran meet back up for the first time.
He's like, "Hey, you owe me. Let's go rescue Katrina."
Also, they both want to kill the Razak, so they're all about that. So the start of book 3 is them going to Helgrund, which is this mountain that the Razak live in. And they go and beat him up and rescue Katrina. And Roran leaves, but Eragon decides to stay and finish off the Razak. And he finds Sloane in there, who was Katrina's treacherous father.
Been blinded by the Razak. His eyes are gone.
Yep. They sort of pecked his eyeballs out. And so he curses Sloane to never be able to see Katrina again. So, because he's been cruel and treacherous, so he doesn't deserve to see Katrina ever again, as far as Eragon is concerned. And he effectively puts a spell on him that'll guide him to Elismira, where he can live out the rest of his days.
In relative peace, as sort of a prisoner of his actions.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of
else?
torn between killing him, to serve justice, because he didn't want to kill him. Even though he was sort of an awful person.
He did the not killy thing.
Well, that, and through magic abilities, you sort of come into contact with other creatures' intellect, and you become pretty aware of the value of life in general.
Yeah.
Because you
Sure.
touch all their
Eragon
consciousnesses.
becomes a vegan because of his
For a
time
while,
with the-
until
for a
absolute necessary in survival. He has to eat critters, but he doesn't enjoy it. That's kind of the elves thing too, is they don't eat meat, and he didn't know why until he got his heightened powers. He's like, "Oh crap, I can feel their thoughts as they are dying. This sucks. I'm not eating meat anymore." Which is kind of interesting, but a side thing. Works his way back to
Then-
the camp.
He needs to get a special sword because the sword he was using was Brahm's old sword, I believe.
Which was in turn, it was Morzan's old sword,
Oh
and
yeah, it was Mars.
Thorn, and Murtag was like, "This sword was my father's. I'm keeping it." So we took it from him, and now he needs a sword because he just has normal human swords, and they aren't as magic as Dragon Rider swords. So
They just don't cut the mustard.
yeah. Normal swords break a lot in comparison.
Yeah. So he goes back to Elismira and talks to the smith lady, and she's like, "Nope, I'm never going to forge another Dragon Rider sword again. Those things have caused so much death that I'm just never going to make one again." He's like, "Please?" And she's like, "Okay, I guess." So
Eragon had been given a message by this mysterious werecat named Solenbum. Was like, by the way, you should check under this tree. There might be something there for you, or a weapon or something like that. And then he's like, he asks the cat, like, "What's the werecat like? What's the deal with this?" "I don't know. Stuff comes out of my mouth. I don't know what it means." But sure enough, there is sort of a ore
a deposit
from a
of this
meteorite,
or
which is totally not like Sokka or anything, but I guess this came first, so never mind. An Avatar, he makes a
Actually,
meteorite
I
sword.
think Brazinger came out after Avatar.
The
finished
meteorite sword
airing.
thing. Nice. At any rate,
Hey, at least it didn't involve dragon
so
droppers.
he's like, "I found this stuff, which is a super strong metal that's only super rare and only found in under this in meteorites, and I found this under a magic tree, which wanted to kill me, but then let me live or whatever. And she's like, okay, well, I can't forge it for you, but I can make you forge it. She's like, let me take over your body.
She takes over his body and forges it.
Mm-hmm. I guess
'Cause she
technically I'm not breaking my oath.
She made a magical oath that literally compels her to not do that. So she takes over Eragon.
Mm-hmm.
Keep saying Eragon. Eragon.
Through Aragog. Argon.
Aragon. So he gets his new sword and he thinks about what to name it, and he's a one-trick pony, so he names it Brazinger after his favorite spell.
Which, unfortunately, because words have power over things in the magic system, every time he says his sword's name, it lights on fire. So he has to be careful with that.
Mm-hmm. So if he just wants to cast the spell...
Because
the
Brazinger
sword's
means
gonna start
fire, and it's the fire spell.
in the ancient elven tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the ancient elven tongue,
ancient
just
language.
the elven tongue. Yes. That's what they call it. So, after he gets the sword, the Dwarf King was killed in the midst of the big battle at the end of Book 2. So they have to go through the process of electing a new one, which is a very tedious process because dwarven politics is not a quickly moving affair. And normally this thing takes an extremely long amount of time, but of course they don't
There's a war on.
There's a war on. We don't have time for this.
And sort of like whether or not the dwarves will support the Varden is hanging in the balance with this whole
Right.
deal, too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the candidates will not lend their support to the Varden, and some will. So it's of the utmost importance that they elect a king that will help out the Varden.
And because Oric, dwarf buddy, he was the foster son of the king, so he's a candidate to be king.
Oh.
So they're kind of like, we hope he gets picked because he's friendly to us, and this would be great.
Yeah, so they send Eragon to go try to help him out and sort of vouch for him. None of the dwarves are particularly enthused about dragon riders, so they're kind of suspicious about him. And he's a human, so they don't like that either. But eventually Oric wins, hooray.
Yay.
He's the king now.
He's
King
Look
under
at me.
the mountain.
I'm the king now. Off to war again.
Off to war again. And Roran eventually works his way up to being commander in the army through his bravery and insistence on doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he works with some pretty incompetent commanders who, if they had followed their orders, would have wiped out the whole unit. But Roran disobeys them and
Saves lives.
saves a lot of people, but still gets punished for his insubordination.
Mm-hmm.
After which the Varden immediately promote him to commander. So
Because he's
that
kind of a
worked out.
hero among the Varden, so if they executed him, then it would basically cause a mutiny.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a pretty competent leader, so they don't want to
yes.
lose him.
What else?
This whole time, Eragon, they have to pretend like Saphira and Eragon are both still back at the camp, because then they would just get attacked by the Emperor. So there's just sort of these elves show up to be like Roran's magical, or not to be Eragon's magic wielding bodyguards, because he's the last good dragon rider. And so they make this sort of weird projection of him to pretend like he's still riding on Saphira's back. And they're separated and they don't like it because they have such a close bond. But they're reunited when he comes back. Katrina and Roran get married before Eragon leaves.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to have a baby, so that's the whole thing.
Like how soon after they get married?
Well,
I see.
yeah.
Anyway.
It's the Eragon equivalent of a shotgun wedding, but they're already planning on it anyway.
Got it.
Yeah. That's a development.
As it turns out, Brahm was actually Eragon's dad.
Mm-hmm.
They learned that from means I forget, but
I think... Shoot. Oh,
There was a memory.
Brahm
that-
left a memory recording
Yeah.
in Saphira's consciousness.
of him kind of telling him about how he was
How
actually his
I
dad.
Because
And your father.
Eragon's like, how on earth
I
could
am your father.
Murtag be my brother? Like, what's the deal with this? This is awful.
How can
He's-
I be Morzan's son?
Yeah.
He was just this terrible
Turns out-
guy, and
Turns out his mother, what was
they
her
had
name?
the same mother,
Yeah,
Selena.
Selena, who realized how awful Morzan was and basically had a love affair with Brahm, out of which came Eragon. And so Brahm took Eragon and put him in the village with his uncle. And
It's
sort
kind
of
of
watched over
interesting
him.
how they do it in the movie. This is the one thing I like about the movie, is that the actor for Garrow, his uncle, and Brahm look almost identical.
Hmm.
That's what I thought as a.
I only ever
child
watched
when
the
I
movie
watched
once.
Yeah, but
At any
they
rate.
may have even been the same actor. I don't remember.
Yeah, it wouldn't
but
surprise me, given how they chose to make that.
Anyway.
So the Eragon and Murtag are half brothers.
Not to worry, we're still flying half,
half a
brother.
brother. The Star Wars references never cease.
No.
That's because this whole book series is a Star Wars reference.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the end of.
Well,
Book-
there's one more thing that happens towards the end of book 3 that's important. They
What's-
learn about the Eldunari.
Oh yeah.
So the dragons have these. It's what's like their heart of hearts is what they call it. So it's this sort of magical. It's almost like a gem, but it's organic, and it can hold a lot of power. Because gemstones in this world can, like, you can store magical energy in them,
Mm-hmm.
so you can fill them up with power to use later.
Yep,
Magic batteries.
pretty much. But you have to charge them
Kinda.
with your life force.
Yeah. You
So-
can pull life force from other things, but people don't like to do that unless they're bad. And if a dragon so chooses, they can transfer their soul into their Eldunari when they die, or like when they're about to die. And once they do that, they can't go back. It sort of
And-
departs.
And they kind of, once their body dies, they're stuck in the Eldunari and are kind of subject to whoever has control over the Eldunari.
Yep.
And so Glader gives Eragon and Saphira his Eldunari, and they find out the reason why Galvatorix is so freaking powerful is because he took this. There's this big repository of Eldunari that he took over when he killed all the Dragon Riders. So he's forcing them to use, to let him use their power. So he's to just get ridiculously powerful, and he gave some to Murtaugh, which explains why he's so powerful already, even though he's barely been a Dragon Rider for that long. Crazy stuff.
So he's just got a whole library of dragon memory backups, batteries
Yeah,
in
pretty much.
his castle.
And they're still generating power.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still conscious in some ways. I mean,
Yeah.
if
Sure.
They're definitely, you can communicate with them to a degree.
if they choose to be communicated with.
Neat.
And the very end is when they start the siege of Feinster, which is important imperial city that they're
Mhm.
trying to liberate.
The Varden decide to go on the offense instead of waiting for the Empire to eventually wipe them out.
Yeah, if they continue knowing that what they've found out about the Eldunari, that
Well, only
They're-
Eragon and a handful of others know about it.
yeah, I thought he told, what's her face? Anyway,
The leader of the Varden.
yeah, I can't remember her name.
I
It
can't
starts
remember her
with
name
an N.
either.
It starts with an N.
Call him Nick Cage. for
Nasuada.
Nasuada, yeah.
now. Got it.
And book 4 is sort of just tying up the loose ends of everything that has happened so far.
The big
and-
climax happens. They have the final battle in the big city. It gets kind of sketchy. everyone, Eragon, Murtagh, Arya, Saphira, they're all brought before Galbatorix, and there's this showdown. And I think Eragon tricks him into blowing himself up, basically.
Yep.
And they kill his dragon, his second dragon that he stole.
Mm-hmm.
And they win.
And they win. And Arya gets one of the last dragon eggs
To hatch
that they had, and it hatches under her guidance, and it bonds with her, so she becomes a rider,
green
sort
dragon.
of against what she would have liked. She didn't really want to be a rider, but now she's kind of stuck with
We
it.
find out that Murtagh was evil because there's this deal where you have a true name, and that in the ancient language, which is your essence, who you are at your core. And if somebody knows that, and they can speak that and gain control over you. So Galbatorix did that to Murtagh, which is why he's sort of his minion now. Can't help it. But if you sort of change a part of yourself over time, like you can't change who you are, but like you change stuff about yourself, that changes your true name, and you can break free of that. And so Murtagh sort of does that and ends up helping them in the end. But it's still a little rough between them because he's done so much bad stuff. He's just like, I've just got to have time to think. Plus, we fought a few times in Eragon. You've kind of messed me and my dragon up, and we're kind of sore about that. So, we're going to take a break for a bit. Get back to us later.
Yep. And Eragon decides that Elagacia is no place to be raising dragons, so
They
he pulls
find-
a Luke.
Before the
and
whole thing, they
leaves
find
the galaxy.
a secret
The
place,
vault.
which is a vault of a bunch of Elgenari and a bunch of dragon eggs they found. So the dragons aren't actually extinct. So yeah, he takes them all to this island, and he gets ready to raise the new generation of dragon riders. Bittersweet ending.
Yeah, it's sort of this Frodo and Gandalf riding off into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
He
There's
knows
no
he
place for
can
him left
never
in
see
this world,
Roran
so
again.
he goes.
Right.
And teaches people how to train their dragon.
Yeah, so that's
That's Eragon.
That's the plot. That's Eragon.
There you go.
So yeah, we've hit on a lot of the key characters so far. Eragon is kind of this kind of cross between Luke and Anakin Skywalker,
Mm-hmm.
where he's just the young, inexperienced, but
Impetuous.
still very, but still quite powerful. And
Learns over time to improve and gain control over his power and himself.
gets his father's sword and all that stuff. Makes his own after losing the original one that he
Mhm.
inherited.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of parallels with
Breaks a couple people out of jail.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Breaks a lady out of jail and becomes attracted to her. Yeah,
It doesn't work out for reasons.
it doesn't work out for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think Saphira is actually a very interesting character because the dragons are very, very
Intelligent.
sentient. Yes, and so they have a lot of mental conversation, and you have a lot of Saphira filtered through Eragon, but still, she's an interesting character in her own right.
Hmm.
She's a very gentle, motherly sort of character, but also like a dragon. You know, she's very fierce and protective and will fight you. So
Likes to eat things
she loves to eat sheep
and drink beer.
and drink
Kegs
beer.
at a time.
Roran is, I think he's probably my favorite character
Yeah.
of this series. He's sort of like the prodigal son. He's the non-prodigal son in some ways, but anyway,
Yeah.
he's kind of good at everything, and he's definitely the older brother of the
Mhm.
of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Eragon sort of gets into his Dragon Rider stuff, he's sort of no longer the overseeing sort of big brother type, because he's not as powerful as Eragon. He's not better than him at everything. But he doesn't let that get to him. He finds his own place, and he grows into a role of leadership through the army
and his village. They basically see him as their leader, as he leads them away from the village towards the Varden to safety. And as they go back to rebuild their village after the war.
He's kind of, I would say, somewhat optimistic beforehand, and then as he fights and is involved with so much death,
he gets kind of grim.
What can men do against a reckless hate?
Yep.
He sort of gets changed by that. He gets jaded a little bit, but he also doesn't let that overwhelm him.
The thing that keeps him steady is his love for Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
That's his main
He's
motivator.
willing to fight for as long as it takes to make sure that she's safe.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of his main motivations too, is for heading onto the Varden, was like, they could maybe help me rescue her.
And I think one of my other favorite characters in this series is Elva.
Oh
who
yeah.
we haven't talked about much so
No.
far. But so Eragon blessed this child, this baby, at Farthendur when he was there, because he has the power by speaking the ancient language. He can give concrete blessings to people that actually do things. So
Because he's an ancient language noob, he kind of messed up on
he
the
messed
blessing.
up real bad on this blessing, and actually he tried to say, may you be shielded from harm, but what he actually said was, may you be a shield from harm. So she ends up being like someone who absorbs other people's pain, like,
And
that's
is
what-
compelled to prevent them from
yes.
feeling pain.
She
so it
has
drives
this
her batty.
sixth sense where she can perceive when someone's about to suffer, and like, so she'll go and intervene to try to like alleviate that, or make
And she
them-
can't help it.
Yeah, she's like, she's just compelled to, because the ancient language has the power to do something.
And she gets sort of unnaturally becomes older or bigger.
Yeah, she matures very quickly, like mentally. Her
Mm-hmm.
body grows unnaturally fast too, but she stops at like a 4-year-old or something. But
Even though
mentally,
she's
like
one.
an adult.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy and unsettling.
But her experience is one of the most interesting things in this book, in this series, in my opinion. She's very bitter towards Eragon because of
What he
what
did to her.
he did to her. But at the same time, she recognizes what her power can do, and like her life is just constant suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But she's able to make meaning out of it by the fact that she's able to see things coming and like tell Eragon about it, so he has the power to do something to prevent that harm.
Yeah.
And
Plus,
also,
he manages to reverse the effect, at least, where like she's compelled to do things for people. Like she still has the sixth sense, but she's not like physically impelled towards preventing that harm. Like she can choose whether or not to now.
Yeah.
any other characters?
Angela's kind of fun. This weird
Angela is fun.
herbalist magic user who shows up with Solumbum the werecat. Sometimes a man, sometimes a cat. They're both rather interesting characters.
Solumbum is fun to talk to.
Yeah. Excuse me, kind of cheeky. Oh, there goes my chair. There we go.
Yeah.
So,
we've touched a lot on the magic system, but I wanted to give it a little more of an in-depth treatment.
yeah.
Like we've said, it's this ancient language of power that sort of contains the real names of things, like their true natures. And being able to say the name of something gives you a degree of power over it.
The sort of like the Platonian concept of the thing is what a true name is.
Yeah. It's sort of like the form.
The true form, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it
ultimate
really
form,
only
yeah.
it really only names it and doesn't necessarily like it allows you to manifest it in a certain way, but there's also I would say it's more of like a sacramental thing, you know.
Yeah.
Words and actions convey a
This
reality.
I guess we may as well this is the truth bit.
Sure,
Because this is
we
like
can
the
do
main
that.
takeaway, I think. Beyond the general good characterization stuff that we can learn from as Catholics, this is something that's
Yeah.
a little more interesting in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's this idea that words have power, and we as Catholics really believe that. You know, we have all of our sacraments are things that have words that do something. You know, when a priest says, "I baptize you in the name of the Father and the Son of the Holy Spirit," that really happens. When you say words with the intent to do what you say, that thing happens through the grace of God. You know, in Eragon, it happens through mysterious magical powers. But it's pointing at this reality that we find a lot behind our sacramental theology, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And there's the whole concept of like the true name of a person being like the core of their identity and their being a very
And-
sacred and something that must be kept sacred and secret. And also like the ability to
And-
communicate with other people's minds that needs to be, you have to be careful with that and respect it because that's like their innermost sanctum. And that's very much reinforced here. So, ethical telepathy.
Ethical telepathy. Goodness.
Goodness.
Sounds like a lot of heroism and
Yeah.
character bonding, good character relationships, sort of
Yeah.
stuff. That's what
Familial
I'm picking up.
bonds, like Roran and Eragon are very loyal to each other because they're basically raised as brothers. And him to Katrina through her marrying Roran. And Eragon struggles a lot internally with Saphira over making the right decision, and manages to, most of the time make the right choice through careful discernment. And that's a good quality. That's kind of one of the central features of his characterization, I guess. Navigating the twists and turns of, the implications of being the last free dragon rider.
Mm-hmm.
And he manages to sort of restore the order of the dragon riders so that they may maintain peace. Another thing that was also interesting was that, so you have the Urgles, which at first seemed like kind of the standard evil characters, right? The evil bad minion characters. But it turns out they have a little more complicated and nuanced history than that. So their whole culture is like to make war, and that's why they fight with the humans is more for their honor than because they hate humans. But because humans fight them, there's this whole thing. Fight back with them, there's this whole thing back and forth. Out of necessity, Nasuata, the leader of the Varden, is like, okay, we're gonna ally with the Urgles. I know the dwarves and elves and humans all hate them because we've been fighting for centuries. But our common enemy is Galbatorix, because the Urgles realize that, he's been using them. And a lot of them had died because of that.
Kind of
So-
betraying their honor.
Yeah. And so they sort of find this newfound respect for these creatures that they had previously hated and distrusted. And there's still a little bit of that going on. But they managed to bridge that gap and join forces. And Eragon, to kind of unite the races and preserve peace in the long term, not only have... Well, elves and humans have been the only dragon riders ever before, but now they decide to extend that to dwarves and Urgles, so that one race, has dragon riders and can wield that power. So it's kind of an interesting thing where like bridging gaps
It
and
becomes more multicultural.
yeah, yep, in a way to try to create lasting peace. So that's, I guess, another big element of goodness. What else? I think that's pretty good. Beauty. The books. Christopher Paolini is a gifted writer. The books are very engaging to read.
He wrote Eragon at 19,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
When did the first book come out? Was it 2000?
It was early 2000s.
Yeah.
Probably 2004 or 5, I think.
Mhm. But yeah, and his parents basically created a publishing company to publish it for him, these books for him.
2002.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When did the last one come out?
2008, I think.
That sounds right.
Okay. So about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Do 4 books.
Yep.
That's pretty fast, all things
Oh,
considered.
2011, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're kind of long books, and
They're
but
probably 600 plus pages.
yeah,
A couple inches thick.
yeah, they're those were my early pandemic books. I had started reading them. I think I was done with book 2 by the time this whole thing hit, and so in my downtime, I just kind of cranked through the 3rd and 4th book. And once I picked him up, I had a hard time putting down. So I can attest to it. Like, I really appreciated the writing style, and he's very he's good at communicating complex concepts and making it work, so it doesn't become boring necessarily. I guess that's the main element to beauty. Now we can talk about the movie in that it's not beautiful or well made or anything.
I mean, for early 2000s, it's the production quality is fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
The writing is.
butchering of the source material.
I mean, it hits all the major plot points. It just doesn't do them justice, from what I hear.
It hits the major
It
plot points of the
doesn't-
first book.
And it purposefully ignores one of the plot points that would allow the series to continue. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. But yeah.
Yeah, I had never had a frame of reference, so I just saw the movie and was like, yeah, that was supremely mediocre.
Yep.
You would virulently hate it had you read the books.
Probably.
Don't bother watching it if you
I mean-
haven't watched it.
It's,
Don't waste your time.
I
We're
could
not-
see.
there's a
my
reason we're
one-
not covering the movie.
That is my one hope. That is the one thing I want is a reboot of Eragon
But as a series instead of a movie.
as a series. We've rebooted. Disney, stop putting all your resources into rebooting movies that don't need to be rebooted.
Yeah.
Just
Reboot
make Eragon.
movie.
Just tell new stories or stories that haven't been told that way yet in a proper way. But yeah,
Yeah.
Unity. I mean, the books, there's a lot of arcs and things that are laid down in the first book and carry through the books, and things are newly introduced. But it all comes to a head in the climax in a very satisfying way. And honestly, the ending was kind of like the bittersweet, I'm leaving the land, even though it's sort of a, on the same note as like how Lord of the Rings ended in some ways. The bittersweet, non-happy ending was an interesting twist, I thought. It wasn't a bad ending, it was a sad ending in some ways. And I kind of appreciate it for that being unique that way.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good stuff. Well,
Well,
that about does it for me, I think. Do we have anything else for the people, as they would say on the Crunch? Bringing the bookends together of this podcast.
I don't know. Where can they find the thing that they're listening to right now?
You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook if I ever remember to post again. At Palladium Papist.
At
You can-
Palapapist.
At Palapapist. Yeah, sorry. The Palladium Papist at
You don't even
gmail.com.
remember the handle anymore.
Yeah. It's
Gotta
been a while.
get a better handle on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to be better with that. If you want to email us with your questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, You can email us at thepalladiumpapers@gmail.com. So, tell your friends to listen to the podcast if you so desire. We want there to be more two of you.
We wish for the 2 to become a larger 2.
Yes. Don't think about it too hard.
Just like Gurren Lagann. Don't think about it too hard.
Yeah.
Which we will hopefully talk about 3 weeks from now.
About what now?
Gurren Lagann. It's a show about robots that you should watch if you have time, but you guys aren't done with My Hero Academia.
Yeah, no.
No, still plugging away.
Yeah, let's go.
Good stuff.
We might talk about that.
How's Undertale coming, by the way?
I've not had time to work on it.
That's okay.
We'll cover that eventually. It's
Anyway, we'll let you people go. We'll continue talking after.
Yeah. Cheerio.
Bye,
Later.
audience.
Goodbye.
Bye.